Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Jay Mason. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers while they're here to be celebrated. With me, I have no stranger to the podcast, Dr. Corey Miles from Tulane University down in the 504, the boot, New Orleans, from the 252. Although he's a Charger and I'm a Hurricane, we can get along. Well, at least my school is not in existence. Shout out to the
Mm.
Jaguars for doing their thing on the basketball court this season, fellas. Keep up the good work. So it's just gonna be two boys from the 252 shooting the sugar honey iced tea on all things in between. Dr. Miles, I'm just gonna say that to start it off because that money ain't cheap. You earned that doctorate. So
I
they
appreciate
call
you.
you Dr. Miles. I'm gonna call you Dr. Miles.
No,
Dr.
no, no.
Miles, how you
You
doing
already
this
know you
evening,
call me
sir?
Corey.
Yeah,
You
like I
already
said,
know.
it's just one time on. I'm just gonna start it off with Dr. Miles, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's Corey from here on out. So Dr. Miles slash Corey, how you doing this evening, sir?
I'm good, man. It's been a busy Friday, but I mean, but I'm here, and it's always a good to talk to a homie from the 252. So yeah, so this is a good way to kind of cap the week off for me.
Yeah, and I think you're gonna need that purple drink that James was talking about now that your 76ers process is nah, dog. I mean, PG-13, that ain't work out. And B, like I got my MVP. I'm gonna shut it down. And pretty much they were expected to really make gains this season, but it turned out that they just said we just gonna punt it.
Yeah, and I mean, I I think the pieces was there. I think Embiid, Maxi, PG, and then with McCain arguably being would have been rookie of the year in my opinion, Jared McCain, if he would have stayed healthy, I think that would have been right. I'm not sure if they would have won a championship. Would have been interesting to watch them all four healthy and hoop and compete. And the thing with the Sixers is not just that the big three or the big four is injured, even the role players injured. So like Lowry's out, and and I think one it just speaks like health. Well, like why health is so important, which to me I think is another lean to to LeBron, to where people might critique LeBron, where it's like, oh, it took him this many years to get this, and he only has these accolades and these records because he's played so long. But I think keeping a physical body healthy, that's part of the game also. And yeah, and so yeah, so the Sixers, I mean, next year's always a possibility. But if I don't know what the recipe is gonna be, if you just try to run it back with everybody and say we just try to get everybody healthy, if you try to mix it up, which is like really big in the NBA, but I would be interested in keeping the core and seeing if we can get folks healthy and kind of see what they at least let them play 30 games together and see how that flows. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it almost feels like Philly is almost like Dallas to where everybody's hurt, but at least with Dallas, you're battling with Phoenix for that final playing spot.
Yeah. No, yeah, and Dallas is interesting. So, and I feel like I can talk more, more not necessarily objectively, but I think I can see Dallas in a way I can't see. So the Sixers, I love the Sixers, so like that's gonna frame my analysis. And with Dallas, I know a lot of the fans that had this emotional connection to Luka, and to see him left. One fan said, "I don't care if we win a championship. I wanted Luca to be here." And to me, I think that speaks to something about one, the fandom, two, what Luca represented. Because in my opinion, I think they're a better team with Kyrie and Anthony. I think that duo could do something amazing if healthy. But yeah, but what do you think about Dallas? Like, what's your thoughts?
My thoughts was when I first heard of the Luka trade, I thought somebody's account got hacked. Because I'm like, there's no way in the world you have a superstar for superstar swap. But for Luca to go to LA with Bron was clearly a move from brass that says LeBron is
Yeah,
probably about a year or two on his way out. Let's go ahead and start transitioning post LeBron, have the guy in place, and that way we can build around him. Now, like how you mentioned earlier with Dallas, they get their inside out combo with Kyrie, aka Uncle Drew, and AD, aka Unibrow, aka AD Shore. they're doing their thing, but everybody's all blanked up and hurt, so they're looking like the mash unit right now. So I
Yeah.
think that with Dallas, once everybody is healthy, I think they'll make some serious noise next season. But I
Mhm.
think this year in the league, it's going to come down to either Oklahoma City out the West, then out the East. I think it's going to be either Cavs or Celtics, but I think Celtics may come out the East. Depends on if Jason Tatum's hairline is not crisp, which will never happen because I've never seen that man without a crisp hairline. I'm sure members of your great organization is trying to push him hard because he definitely has J5 tendencies.
Okay. And it's so weird. So I'm a Duke fan, right?
Uh,
We probably gonna run that national championship up. But but as a Sixers fan, I can't cheer for Tatum on the Celtics. But I will say, and two, I'm like a light skin, like nigga, you rich, athletic, light skin, good hairline. You don't deserve another championship, right? God already gave you everything you need.
hmm hmm Yeah, I mean Tatum looked like he could have been from Hollister somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
hmm
and for those of
Yeah,
you who don't know, like Hollister,
yeah.
that's where like
Yeah, either
native
Hollister
light
or
skinned folks.
Pony down. Shout out to all my folks in Pembroke. And right now with the NCAA tournament, March Madness is going on. We got University of Houston playing tonight. We're recording this on Friday, March 28th, playing against the Purdue Boilermakers and Coach Calvin Sampson. He's from North Carolina, from around the Laurinburg, Pembroke
Mm.
area. He's from the Lumbee tribe and went to school actually at UNC Pembroke back when it was
Oh, that's
Pembroke State
dope.
University.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's dope.
Yeah. From down that way, I know a partner that was down at UNCP doing his undergrad years, and I'm like, man, y'all probably had to go to south of the border for entertainment.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, we weren't that bad in 252. At least we had Rocky Mount 45 minutes, Raleigh 2 hours, Richmond hour 30. And if you really were feeling extra risky, go on drive 95 to 495 to DMV.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It ain't that far. If traffic good, you'll get there in about 3.5, 4, depending on how you test that speed
Yeah,
limit.
but just make sure you don't speed on 58 though, going through Emporia.
Ah, I got my first ever traffic ticket there. So that you say that like yeah, so that's real. Like my first ever ticket, I got it 58.
Yeah, if you know, 58 going through Emporia, Brunswick County, Virginia, Greenville County, they'll sit around, lurk for you. North Carolina State Troopers do too. So don't be speeding in North Carolina because they'll pop out and show you, just like Kung Fu Kenny did the Aubrey on the Super Bowl halftime show, but we'll get into that later.
Oh,
So I was curious, did you happen to
yeah.
see any of Jameis Winston's star making turn doing commentary during the Super Bowl down in the Crescent City?
Mm. It's so funny because I feel like I was out and about in the streets and everybody saw him. Like he was just like everywhere. I didn't run into him physically in the streets. But I saw like clips of him online though.
Mm.
But one I think one when he was here and kind of what he meant both culturally and like as an athlete to the city is like dope. Where and to his and it's like when I'm reading him, sometimes I don't know if he's being sarcastic or is he like being serious. And I love that about him to where he's like so animated to where in an authentic way where it's like, oh shit, like this just might be him. And I also think like this guy really can't. Is this really his personality? But no, but like as a human being, as a athlete, I mean, I just love all the commentary around him. Every good thing that comes to him, I think he deserves it.
Yeah, it felt like he watched that Hits from the Street Musa Mu episode on repeat because I saw all the videos of his commentary. It definitely gave me Hits from the Street vibe. I knew it was gonna be lit when he talked about grape Coke, grape soda, and going to get pig feet from the country store. He from
Mm-hmm.
Bessemer, Alabama, the same old town as Bo Jackson. So I know that he was raised on that pig feet, pickle sausage, all that stuff that, of course, you and I both know about since we're from those small little areas where your mama send you to go get a box of Salem's, Newports, Cools, Virginia Slims, whatever cigarette she smokes, and some Tussie. And you don't know what Tussie is? If you ain't take no wash up, no bath, no shower, hit that Tussie, you be thinking it was gonna get you through until you were able to take a shower, bath, or whatever the next day. But Jameis, good dude, deserves all that he gets. He just signed, I think, with the New York Giants, and also
Mhm.
Russell Wilson just signed with the New York Giants. And in that process, the NFC East, I believe, became the first division in the NFL to ever have four black starting QBs.
Mhm. No, I mean that's interesting. Where, yeah, I'm not sure if I have an informed thought about it. I mean, because I think both of them deserve a starting job in the NFL, and that's just like my bias. And no, but hopefully the signing one, I think it speaks to, in part, I think the evolution of the quarterback position, to where I think historically how both of them play. You know what? Now I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. I think how we think about, if we think about race and we think about sport and football, where the quarterback position historically seemed like, right, this pocket passer who needs to be calm, cool, collected. We think about accuracy. We're thinking about, right, precision in a way that I think both of those guys, maybe Winston, he a little shaky sometimes, but I think they bring their own type of flavor to that. And then to me to sign both, it's like just a real interesting move to where it's not this idea that, oh, if I want like the traditional quarterback and I'm gonna keep you on, like, just to have like a variety, but it seems like a real investment in, I think, the themes that black quarterbacks bring. And to me, I think that's like it's an interesting type of move for the organization.
Right, and keeping in with the VA ties, Russell Wilson being from Richmond and 757 NFL modern day quarterback wave payer Michael Vick is now official coach at Norfolk State. And then that later led
Mm-hmm.
to Deshaun Jackson taking a head coaching job at Delaware State. Eddie George just went from Tennessee State to Bowling Green. And as of the recording of this podcast on Friday, March 28th, Deion Sanders just signed an extension at Colorado, and ever since he
Mm-hmm.
touched down in Boulder, the price gone up, enrollment among us went up. I'm like, sooner or later they're gonna call it Colorado Agricultural and Technical State University, and they're gonna probably do a remix to Jiho with some vegan food and all of that good stuff. And then we'll have Sigma Phi Upsilon and all the IFC orgs probably try to do Stomp the Yard, offbeat, of course. But it's just great to see how Coach Prime, when he got to Boulder, really shook up the culture of that town, of that area of Colorado, to where they're much watched TV. And Travis Hunter won the Heisman this past season. Shador's looking at to be a top 10 draft pick. And then also,
Mm-hmm.
too, that just was announced that in 2 years, in 2027, the Sundance Film Festival will be moving to Boulder. So Boulder's winning right now.
Mm. Oh, God, and I think it reminds me of one of my favorite movies, on White Man Can't Jump, where Billy, like the white main character, right? He tells Sydney that you rather look good and lose than like look ugly and win. Basically, like the Sydney's like flashy, like the black players like dancing after shots, and and I think what Sydney and the other black players was doing in the film kind of speaks to like what's happening now. It's not just enough to have a good program, but those cultural pieces, kind of, can you make people excited? Can you bring in attention? Can you create an entry point for people who might not necessarily be football fans, but they can kind of see culture in what you're doing? And right, and it creates a type of movement. And of course, like, the football has to be good too. But it creates this type of opening where, because we always say it's always big in sports, which it is, that, right. And I think the university sees they did. But I know other universities see a type of movement where it is about the sport, but it's also about these other cultural things that matter to me fundamentally for the educational experience and also just for like how universities should function. Like universities should be fun. They should spark debate. They should create conversation. They should shift how we think about how does a football team should look and move and feel. And yeah, and I think like Dion is kind of setting ways. They're like and just kind of put a pin on that point. I ain't hear about no niggas going to college before him. Like I wouldn't imagine that as like this type of cultural space in the way that we do now. And it's through him, and it's through football, and it's through the players, and it's through right this type of cultural production that they're doing.
Yeah, because prior to Coach Sanders coming in, Colorado really hadn't had glory days in football since when Cordell Stewart, Michael Westbrook, Eric Bieniemy, Darren Hagan,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those guys were coming through in the late 80s, early 90s under the late Coach McCarthy, and how he went to places that some coaches wouldn't go recruit and got
Yeah.
guys to come to Boulder because one of the guys he recruited was living in South Central back when the Red and Blues were real active. And I believe this
Mm-hmm.
guy really wanted to go to Nebraska, and of course they were rocking all red. And the coach made the point like, "Hey, you thinking about going to Nebraska, right?" And the guy was like, "Yeah." And coach was like, "Hey, you know they rock them B colors up there, right?" And you know you stay in the C part of the neighborhood. You can't be coming back to your neighborhood rocking them bees.
Mm-hmm. I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, man. So definitely great to see what Coach Prime is doing up in Boulder and all the success that he's having. And speaking of with programs and culture and how the shift of the athletes now having the power with NIL, the transfer portal, and we just saw with my beloved Tar Heels catching the fade from Ole Miss. They're currently playing right now against Tom Izzo and Michigan State, or as I like to call them, Duke Midwest. That a couple of Tar Heel players have hit the portal. Bye bye Elliot Cadeau, bye bye Ian Washington, and just how athletes, you're not really going to see those guys that stay in school 3, 4, 5 years. It's almost where coaches are constantly having to recruit their players year in, year out, where it's like, oh, I'm not getting enough run. I'm going to go transfer. Oh, you ain't paying me this much for the bag. I'm going to go here. This school offering me this much. What you going to give me? So it's almost now what was considered illegal just a couple of years ago. It's now above ground, and you're giving boosters the green light to pretty much bankroll your athlete success. I want to get your take on that. And of course, with you being at Tulane, private university, go Green Wave, just how does that factor in, you think, to your school's landing those guys that can have prowess on the field, but because of
Yeah.
the reputation of being a private school, you got to have the grades too.
Yeah. And so I'll start it by saying one, and I think that's like part of just American culture, right? To where you should move to where the capital that people will give you represents your worth. And I feel like players, young people, largely black athletes, were restricted and confined and couldn't really name what they were worth. And so I do like the freedom they have to kind of think about where they are, what matters for them. And so I do think I do really appreciate that. I do think about so I think about like the NCAA tournament is going on now, and what we've seen this year is that smaller universities like mid-major programs, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to compete now with the larger universities. To where if NIL in part is about one performance, also cultural prestige, and how these things kind of factor into like an economic package to where it's a lot more difficult for a mid, say like a Davidson where Curry went to, might be just less appealing than say why not just go to Duke like his brother did in a way that. So I'm interested in seeing how do the smaller schools, in particular, I'm thinking about HBCUs factor into this. Like 10 years from now, like what are we gonna see happen from? So now because maybe 5 years ago, three. top ranked basketball players. Like shit, let's go to an HBCU together, and they can hoop and it'll be exciting, right? In a way that this might be less advantageous move now, maybe or maybe not, but I'm not sure how it's gonna play out. But no, I think like anything where I can see it making individual people, basically people with a type of stardom, giving them a little more freedom. It might constrain the player who's not like star level college player, but he got hustle, that he could potentially be at like a major D1 school. And then I think it might constrain some players and benefit other ones. My intuition says it's gonna hurt kind of mid-major programs for a little bit, but I'm not sure what it's gonna look like in 10 years. I love to kind of hear kind of like how do you see this shift and like what do you see kind of shaking and moving?
Yeah, almost the same thing. Like you said, I think the mid majors are pretty much hampered with NIL, the transfer portal, because they don't have the resources that these Power Five schools can offer. I mean, there's only so much beignets and po' boys and muffaletta sandwiches and that you can offer as opposed to, hey, just give him a bow box full of 100K and he'll come to Duke, come to Carolina. If you don't want a player that's gonna take your shine and be all in the plays, all on the highlights, all on the TikToks, alley ooping, come to Carolina. I mean, it's about. I mean, we really do need you. So if you got some NIL players in the portal, please come to Carolina. We got a great institution, the greatest of all time. Went to this school. He'll hook you up with some free shoes, especially if you are a big man. We had struggled at that this season. We need a big, 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 and a guard that does not turn over. So please, if you want to solicit your services to that great Carolina blue, not that yucky powder Duke blue. Come on down to Chapel Hill and you could get sunrise biscuits, timeout. You could probably see MJ and he'll hook you up with shoes, but don't take it personally if he says you got to take off those lottie das that you're wearing because they don't have his logo on it. Yes, he is that petty. See the last dance. So once again, come to Carolina if you are in need of a place of good loving, good home cooking, and you want to be on the right side of blue, come to Carolina. You may even get to sit in on a practice with Bill Belichick, which I found very surprising that he took the football gig at Carolina because Carolina, like Duke and like State, well, State is not even in this conversation. So, like Carolina and Duke, how you're known for basketball, but football, Tar Heels haven't won an ACC title since when Lawrence Taylor was suiting up for the Tar Heels, 1980. So hopefully Bill Belichick can turn around the tide of Carolina, but it got to be to where the boosters got to put that money up, and I think they'll be willing to do that. And of course, Belichick got his young tender with him, so I'm like, he probably may pop up and go to G-Ho, go to Central, go to Shaw, go to St. Aug. I mean, all the schools are right there. So he can hang out with the young tender over on the yard at Carolina, then slide on over to St. Aug for some seasoning.
First of all, the boosters in Carolina should be paying you for that marketing pitch you just gave for the basketball team. That was and that was a good sale.
I know, right? Coach Davis, Carolina Boosters, put my check in the mail, please.
But no, it's so funny because I always tell people like the whitest thing about me is that I'm a Duke fan, and then I feel like when I think about it like this, and but no, so my sister she goes to Carolina. She's actually graduated this year, and yeah,
Okay.
and and Belichick, yeah, I mean I think so. I'm not a coach, um, and I know some people might have imagined like a step down, but I don't. I think, and you was kind of hinting at this. I think it's an interesting opportunity though for him and for the university, and then too, I think just the prestige of a Chapel Hill. I think horrible records because the prestige is so high that you're at Chapel Hill. So I think he landed at an amazing place in part because right, it's Chapel Hill, and it's like, why would you want to be in Chapel Hill? And then that's me as a Duke fan saying that They ain't Choppy ain't been the nicest at football. But I do think right the right personnel that it's already an infrastructure there in place to where something magical could potentially happen over the next few years.
Hmm. Yeah, because how many times you think he probably called Brady like, "Hey, sit in on this pitch for me"?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, you got the goat to where he is. You had Gronk and all those other players that came through with the Patriots, and you got all those rings. So that pretty much speaks for itself. Now, a couple of weeks ago on the pod, I interviewed Dr. Mark Anthony Neal from Duke, and we were talking.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah, I put my Carolina bias to the side that day, but just how. A lot of the Duke Carolina guys rolled in the same circles, go to the same barbershop, go to the same
Uh-huh.
outside spots, and I think Grant Hill had told a story how him and Christian Laettner was kicking it over at Central when they
That's
were at Duke.
wild.
I mean, I mean, I can see Christian Laettner back during that time frame. His looks, he was definitely the white Mike of his time, where it was like, oh, Christian Laettner, getting down with those three letters, nine, number 13, cocaine, aka pure white, spring '92.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Oh,
he
that's
definitely gives y'all vibes back in the that pretty boy and that arrogantness. And Cooper Flag definitely is from that Christian Laettner, Grayson Allen, Cherokee Parks, JJ Reddick, Steve Wojciechowski, Duke as a staff, as a record label, and as a crew. And I'm standing 10 toes on business on that one. Coach K, forget you too. John Sawyer, forget
oh,
you too. Nolan Smith, forget you too. Corey McGaddy, Elton Brand, forget you too. Anybody that wear that Duke blue, forget you too. But it's all in love, though. I still love y'all, though. But when it comes to the Duke Carolina here, it's Tar Heel born, Tar Heel bred. When I die, be Tar Heel dead. Why do you think God made the sky Carolina blue and not Duke blue? I'm just saying.
oh,
I'm just saying.
oh.
I'm
Dr. Neil, whenever you watch this, you hear it, right? You hear it. But no, I mean, but I was like, that's what I love about the fact that I'm from North Carolina, right? Well, I feel like at a young age, and most of us can't even, I mean, I can remember it, but just how our college teams matter so much for the communities, for the people, and I love how you said we NC State ain't even a factor because it's really Duke, Chapel Hill, and if you like State and and you didn't go there, I don't know, like I'm kind of get like that's kind of shaky to me, like hold on, but I gotta. Why do you think? I think I got my answer to this, but why do you think like Wake Forest gets kind of left out of all
Because
this?
Wake is private, and I don't know if you know Wake Forest was originally in Wake Forest, North Carolina, but because they got money from the R.J. Reynolds family, they ended up moving to
Mm.
Winston-Salem, but they ended up keeping the name Wake
Oh.
Forest. So that's how they ended up in the 336. But just Wake, to me, Wake wasn't really a factor for me growing up as a kid until once they got
Yeah.
Tim Duncan. And but they had good teams prior. They had Muggsy Bowles. They had
Mm-hmm.
Hollister native Delaney Rudd played at Wake Forest, played in the league for a good minute. He went to Eastman actually when it was a high school still. But like
Hmm.
I said, he played ball at Wake Forest, played in the league for a little bit. But it's just that, Wake wasn't even a non-factor. And then when we were kids,
Yeah.
NC State, it would be where they have a good team every couple of years or so. I remember them having that Sweet 16 run some years ago, back when Herb Sendek was coaching. They had Julius Hodge, and
Yeah. Yeah.
then last year they pulled one out the backside. I mean, they made that Final Four run. The men and the women did, and then a year later they fired Kevin Keats, and now they got Will Wade from McNeese State coming in as the new coach of NC
Mm-hmm.
State. But how did y'all let NC State run the fade on y'all
Right.
last year?
So
How?
that one,
How?
and
How
like
though?
that.
I mean, they barely got in the tournament. They had to win the ACC tournament just to get in. They hadn't won an ACC title before last year since Pine State Milk. was in stores when the late great Jim Valvano was storming the sidelines at Reynolds Coliseum.
I have the personnel like the players we had. Like if you were like a sports betting fan, you wouldn't have picked a NC State money line. I don't even think you would have picked State to cover the spread. But and two, I think it comes down to when you own the court, right? Everybody's a high caliber player, and whoever put the ball through the hole gonna get it. And it make me think about when in the Final Four that was in New Orleans a few years ago, Duke and Chapel Hill in the Final Four, when we have Bankera and Caleb Love's in Chapel Hill, and they right give it to Duke in the final, and it's like if you look at the people, the person, it's like who would have thought Chapel Hill could pull it out? But I mean, but that's what I love about college basketball, though, because I mean, at that level, is really when you out there. I don't care about your name. I don't care if you NBA bound. None of that matters. We got 40 minutes, and who's gonna play the hardest? And in that Duke game, at least the one against NC State, I mean, for what I like, the paint we couldn't defend. Like from whatever it was just oh no.
I mean, it was a sight to see. Whenever Duke loses, a sight to see. But to have y'all lose to NC State, but before that, the best time for me as a Carolina fan when Duke took the L was at Coach K's retirement party. I mean, that was the best retirement party ever. I mean, you had all the brotherhood coming back, all sitting center court, and then we gave them the fade, and then Coach K had to get on the mic and calm the fans down. And I mean, it was like, yes, Dean Smith would be smiling in his grave at that. But y'all slayed the Duke killer last night, though. Unfortunately, he ain't had no help. But it kind of looks like Duke is a freight
Playing.
train with no brake and all gas, and looking to make their way down to San Antonio to cut down them nets.
Yeah, it's tough. It's great. So at the beginning of the tournament, I was most worried about just matchup wise, Florida and Alabama, and that's what I mean. What is hard to predict because anybody can be good on any given night, but I don't know. I like teams where I mean now I feel like you gotta have shooting, which definitely I think Alabama does. But like Florida's defense is I just don't want to play them. If we make it to the championship, I wouldn't want to. I was like, I just don't want to play Florida in the championship. But but no, yeah, but I'm excited though. I think this year it's like it's a lot of good basketball and Duke. I mean, of course, I want Duke to win, which I feel like we are, but not so like based on who's left now. And your boys,
We
they
on the
got
couch.
booted.
We on the
They got
couch.
booted a little early. So like your secondary, like just based off kind of what you seeing, who you kind of leaning toward.
I'm leaning towards Houston. I want Houston to rid the ghost of Five Slammer Jammer, them losing to NC State in '83 at the pit in Albuquerque off of a last second dunk by Lorenzo Charles, and just being always the bridesmaid, but never the bride. And then also mentioning too how Calvin Sampson being from North Carolina, just to get him one and to really etch his career as a great college coach. I mean, he took Oklahoma to a Final Four when Oklahoma was and still
Mm-hmm.
is known as a basketball football power. It's kind of same
Mm-hmm.
thing now with Alabama. You know, them making their Final Four run last year, and right now they will be playing, I believe, Duke tomorrow in the Elite Eight for the right
Mm-hmm.
to go to San Antonio, and just how they're kind of sort of getting up there to where, hey, we can ball too, and we're not just a football school anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, like you mentioned earlier with Belichick, if they could kind of sort of build that, I think Carolina can kind of sort of have that same feel on the football field. But with basketball, Coach Davis got to figure something out to where the Carolina way,
Yeah,
the legacy of Dean Smith, the legacy of Roy Williams don't even matter to these kids anymore. It's all about what can you do for me and how big the
that's a
bag
really good point. That's a really good point, and I see that, and and so this might be the my age coming out. So like these young niggas don't, but I see that in sports and music where something about carrying on a tradition, something about right legacy and history, and wanting to position yourself in that. I feel. I mean, not because of young people themselves, but because of all these other economic and political things that get imposed upon them to where
Hmm.
that becomes like less of a priority just because of all these other things coming at them. And yeah, and I think like definitely where right like the history it's a lot more difficult for history to sustain organizations now to
Hmm.
where it's like what's it like what have you done for me lately, like what would you look like recently when history is history. And yeah, but I will say that I do think in music and in sport, I love seeing young folks who do have that historical knowledge, who do kind of use it and as a type of anchor for them. Well, because I think that's important, right? And it makes the game more meaningful too. It makes it bigger than you. It makes it bigger than this moment. It's and it puts you into like this long historical tradition, and that feels good.
Right. How much do you want to bet Silver was woo when Minnesota didn't make it to the finals? Because imagine if Ant Man, Atlanta Ant, got him one, and we see that he ATL all day, every day. And you know that if he would have got him one, it would have been Tupac Hit 'Em Up remix, the intro to Love Sosa, all your aggressive crunk records, all rolling into one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he wants all the smoke. He don't care. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Netflix joint that just dropped showing the US Olympic team over in
I haven't,
Paris.
not
So
yet,
it's
not
definitely
yet.
great, but there's a point where I guess President Obama had came and talked to the players and some of the other dignitaries at like a private event, and I guess they were chatting afterwards. And Ant was, saying, "Hey, tell these boys I'm the truth," in front of President Obama. I'm like, that's the type of brashness that Madison Avenue likes, but you got to kind of sort of dress it up a little bit. They want you to be, in the words of Darius in Atlanta, um, you too, Malcolm.
Mm,
they want you to be a little bit more Martin, where you kind of suited and booted to that company line. Can't be coming all aggressive, all hard, and there is still that code switching assimilation that we have to do when we come into those spaces
yeah,
where we're not in those C suites. We're not the decision makers, especially when you look at how the NBA is expanding globally and how you want that guy to be the face of the league, which
yeah.
I think now with the game being so global, we probably won't have a US face. It's going to be a collective of a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
international guys like Giannis, Jokic, Wemby, SGA. That's going to be the face of the league because we haven't had a US NBA MVP since when Harden won it because I believe the last 6, 7 winners have been all international guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or yeah, I guess Embiid is international. Like
Yeah, I think
even
he
though he
got
is,
dual
yeah,
citizenship. He just became a U.S.
yeah.
citizen, but he
But
was
to your
considered.
point,
Yeah, go ahead.
no. But I'm saying no, you're right though. Yeah, like no, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
No, no, no.
I'm
Go ahead.
listening.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
No, yeah. I mean, like what you saying is like so real and true. Where so one of my things is I miss the NBA was filled with the young niggas from the hood who just hooped every day. Now it's a bunch of light skinned niggas because all the old NBA players marry white women, and we get Devin Booker, and we get the light skins hooping, and then since it is an international game, we get the international stars, and something about that man. I grew up hooping on and even not even just kind of like the performance of say like of like Anthony Edwards, but also the play styles to where like if you growing up like on the street in the park, right? We not running plays, but it is about like an ISO game. Was about I can create a shot, and you can only do that in the NBA now if you're the star. And then so unless you're amazing at it, now the NBA you have to be a 3 and D. You have to be able to shoot, space the floor, defend, and something about those creative players, like a Jamal Crawford, those players that we might assign to, oh man, you could tell he hooped in the streets or he would be good in the streets. That's kind of getting pushed out because of analytics, because of play style. And to see like an Anthony Edwards throw up some bad shots, but hit a bunch of other bad shots, like say fuck you nigga to like the white fans who courtside, right? I think it brings a type of energy that so much of the way in which the NBA is moving is pushing that energy out. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, Lord, please don't let Memphis and Atlanta meet in the NBA Finals. I mean, Atlanta Crump mixed with 3-6 and whoop that trick. Boy, you want to talk about a fight before halftime? Play some Memphis and some Atlanta back to back. Now, speaking of Atlanta, did you happen to catch the not Netflix Hulu documentary about Freaknik?
Haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet.
So dope. So dope. Very great. I always heard stories about Freenet, about
Mm-hmm.
how folks were making decisions to move to Atlanta based off of Freenet. They said, forget them classes. I ain't coming back. I mean, it was where folks were literally bumper to bumper on the highways because everybody was stuck on the road. Where if you were an entrepreneur, you let me set up my shop where I got some stuff on the grill. I got my blanket with bootleg CDs, bootleg tapes, and just how when LaFace was getting on board, they were passing out samplers on cassette to where this was before Outkast dropped, and how that really sparked the boom for them with
Yeah.
Seven Player Listic and everything, and just how that was a great time with Atlanta. And I know you remember Shorty Smeen, Wine KP, and Envy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Envy's from Weldon, right?
No.
No, she from Weldon, dog.
You come with all the history and data. I didn't.
Nah,
I didn't know
she
that.
from Weldon. She actually came to my middle school to perform. This was back when schools used to have assemblies in the afternoon. I don't think they don't do that no more for the kids. So they had an assembly. She came through. This was when Shortest Remember was hitting. So she came through performing, and she was talking about I got an album coming out, and I guess the album ended up getting shelved, but it was just the fact that she's from the hometown and knowing
Yeah.
that, oh, the song's hitting and she on Soul Train on BT, MTV. It's like, oh, she from Weldon. And just thinking like, it's possible if you really want to go that route,
Yeah.
go that lane, with her. And then, of course, prior to her, you got Jodeci, doing their thing
Uh-huh.
musically and how they changed the look for male R&B groups to where you're not wearing the suits and the crisp, clean haircuts. You're wearing the
Uh-huh.
baggy jeans, the Tims. You had dudes wearing leather in hot 100-degree weather, begging, crying, whining. Not like he sweat though. But I mean that's a classic. But I mean just to think to take, you know, the four country boys from North Carolina, rebrand them and to reimage them as, the bad boys of R&B to where they're still standing, still touring, and still doing their thing to this day, and how that has to be contributed to the fact that we have a lot of folks from up north. When we're from North Carolina, so when we say north, we consider anything north, Virginia up. Virginia
Uh-huh.
up. That's considered north. But
That's
how a
up
lot
north.
of folks from that part of the country will come down south to the HBCUs and they will bring their culture with them. So a lot of the sounds from New York, from DMV, from Cali out west will make their way south. And there was a lot of transferring of, hey, you got to check this person out. Hey, you got to check this person out. And this was
Mhm.
pre-internet, and just how those regional divides started to break when that happened. And I kind of felt 92 was the shift where once the Chronic went pop, it was pretty much a West Coast record going pop, and then that set the stage for Snoop, everything after that, and then to see now recently with Kendrick doing the Super Bowl halftime show, and
Yeah.
how his style and sound follows that lineage of all those West Coast acts that preceded him, to where he had a whole Super Bowl roasting RB Graham.
Hmm.
What's your take on Kendrick's Super Bowl halftime show performance and the layers of what he was saying during the performance, to where you had to watch it multiple times to really understand the Easter eggs and everything that was being said?
Hmm. Oh yeah. So I think I'm gonna have my feelings. I think a lot of people gonna agree with part of it and probably disagree with me with the other part. But I think this kind of merging of right history and narrative and imagery with hip hop and being able to hold on to home, that shit is like amazing. To where you can do all these sophisticated things and remain rooted into where you from. Like to me that's like dope. And not only that, you given a type of message, that you're doing a type of political work, but it's also interesting. Because I think like if you do the imagery, if you tell the stories, but this shit is boring, it kind of defeats the purpose of it. And so it always has to be captivating. It also it has to move people in a aesthetic way. And I think right, Kendrick maybe in my lifetime does that in a way that right. I don't see anyone else kind of bridging those. And so like old heads be like, oh, the music today don't talk about nothing. Like I would charge them to think about what Kendrick does in some ways is a lot more intricate than than I'm not even gonna name older artists, but for them it's just, oh, if the message good, then like the song's good. But I think Kendrick does the message, but also thinks deeply about the aesthetics of it. And too, like, and Kendrick can build on these other folks. And I think he's taken kind of like the consciousness, the political movement, and he's took it somewhere different. So I'm not saying he's better than anybody in the past, but he has a good foundation. And the piece I think people may disagree with me about is is that I would say I don't think Drake lost as bad as people make it seem. He lost for sure. But I do think that and I hate defending light skinned niggas, but I do think that so like if I go back to the 2002 and I go to Rocky Mountain, I go to the boat ride and I'm in like in a hood club, I'm gonna hear Drake more than I'm gonna hear Kendrick. If I right, I don't know, if I'm riding around with my lady, I probably play a couple more Drake songs than Kendrick. So they say that I, for me, I think about like musical scenes. So
Mm,
like it's different places I listen to music in. So like when I'm at home, I'm trying to like think. I got a certain soundtrack. When I'm in my car, I got a certain soundtrack. Like if I'm at a wedding, I want to hear a type of soundtrack. If I'm at a and I think Drake's scene, it's just different than Kendrick's. And I think the way Drake performed in the quote unquote beef speaks to kind of the scene he functions in. So
mm.
where if we're trying to judge Drake based off what Kendrick does, Drake is gonna lose by a mile. And I think and similarly, well, but I do think that Kendrick could probably do what Drake does, probably just as well as like if Drake want, I mean Kendrick wanted to do say, I would say like take care. is probably Drake's best to me. I think Kendrick could do a Take Care album, and that should be amazing.
Right.
And but yeah, and so yeah, so to kind of wrap this, like to kind of bring all around, I think what Kendrick does is like amazing, and I think Drake saving grace is that the fact that Kendrick is so amazing, the fact that you get to beef with him kind of elevates Drake in a way to where like Kendrick would never make a diss track about me just because it ain't that important, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
not even, and I think the fact that Drake can compete with Drake, and I mean Drake can compete with Kendrick, and the fact that you can lose to him says something about you, and it's partly because of how good I think Kendrick is. So the fact that you can lose to a Kendrick mean you got to play the game.
Right.
Like I would never play LeBron in a game because shit, I ain't even good enough to get on the court. And but the niggas who lose to LeBron would kill me. And but yeah,
Yeah, that's
but
why
yeah,
they
I
always
love to
say.
hear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why they always say the dude that's on your 11th, 12th man on your bench will smoke you at your Saturday YMCA game. I mean, if you look at the movie Hustle, I mean, main dude that was in the movie, he was cooking. And me and my wife was sitting there watching, like, how come this dude ain't getting no burn in the league? I mean, watching these international players playing ball, like, how come Nick Batum ain't getting no burn? Rudy Gobert is actually cooking. I mean, some of these guys that are not your superstar NBA guys, but once they put on their country's uniform, they become like top dog.
they tough. Yeah, they tough.
Yeah, they just tough joke. And the thing you mentioned about Kendrick and Drake, how Drake has a good lean on the pop aesthetic, and that's his lane because he knows I'm gonna make records that's for clubs, for the ladies, and
Yeah,
while Kendrick, he's gonna make records that's gonna make you sit, make you think, make you ponder, have Easter eggs that you got to go back and listen to a couple of times.
yeah.
And you say he could easily do a pop style record, but
I think.
that's not his lane. I mean, that's
Mhm.
almost like when Nas made "You Owe Me." It was a great record, but we know that he was chasing the commercial bag, and
Yeah,
just how it was jamming. I mean,
yeah.
genuine on the hook, but that's not what
That
we
ain't what I'm
know
here for.
Nas for. I mean, when I want something that's ear friendly, ear candy, I'm gonna put on this. If I want something that's gonna give me a message, I want that. But you can't listen to all that all the time because I think for a lot of our old heads that grew up in that golden era hip hop, it was definitely hard on that mixtape to go from Public Enemy to Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince or MC Hammer. I mean, how do you go from Fight the Power, the parents just don't understand, to You Can't Touch This? But it was eclectic, but it was just the aesthetics and the stylings and the messaging was off. And I mean, Kendrick's music
Yeah.
is. I know you probably seen Menace to Society, right?
Of course.
You know the
Of
scene
course.
when they were in the car waiting at the chop shop, and Sharif was like, "Hey, put this in," and Stacy was like, "You better go
Mm.
somewhere with that Black Power stuff.
Mhm.
That stuff gets no play in this ride." It's
Mhm.
almost kind of like that feel where you got to have something to break up that monotony and to just
Yeah.
have a free flow. Now, with you being New Orleans, boots on the ground, see what I did there, boots on the ground. Learn the line dance before you go to somebody's.
That.
And be sure to have your fan too, if you know, you know. But being down in New Orleans and with Super Bowl just recently, how did that affect the local economy? Was the city trying to say, "Oh, we trying to get some of y'all vagrants out to another far part of the city because we know the
Yeah.
C-suite and everybody gonna be coming, and everybody's gonna hit for a nice little lick."
Right. Yeah. I mean, so yeah. So the city. So on my so I live 2 blocks from the Superdome, and so my road was shut down. So since New Orleans is below sea level, like our roads get eroded quickly because of like the water, like just kind of tears roads up. And so they repaved most of the city. Um, they actually took so in most major cities, right, homeless folks, right, they congregate downtown, and so they forcefully bus homeless folks right outside of the city area so like people wouldn't have to see the homelessness. And the interesting part, not interesting, but maybe fucked up part is how much they spent to do that. They could have housed those people in hotels for like 6 months. Like how much they invested in that project,
Mm-hmm.
and 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 this idea that the last time the Super Bowl was in New Orleans, right? The power had cut off in the Superdome. It was like a disaster, and so much of it was about how can we sell New Orleans, and so like the Super Bowl logo this year was designed by like a local black artist. How we get the buildings and we get like murals painted, we get like music produced. And so I think the thing that was trying to, and so they bring out a Mardi Gras vibe. And so if you were in the city during the Super Bowl, how like the Mardi Gras floats, they have like Eagles floats and Chiefs floats, and they're trying to show that it's a type of vibe, a type of aesthetic that you will get from New Orleans that you can't get anywhere else. And a lot of it felt like because of so many of the failures from the previous one, that they were trying to show that the music, the food, the sound, the right, just the vibe of it's February and you can be outside in 78-degree weather that you want your Super Bowl here. I think about I can't remember who said we was talking about when a lot of people didn't go to all-Star Weekend NBA in Indiana. Like, who trying to go to Indiana in February? And part of New Orleans was that this is right a destination for like NBA All-Star Weekend that's going to be around February time for the Super Bowl. And yeah, and I think because there are so many low-income Black folks to and like I make a good amount, but I can't afford to go to the game. But just to be close to it,
Mm-hmm.
I think that does something, right? To where I'm not in the Super Bowl, but I'm here in the city and I can feel it and I can see it. And I think a lot of people, right, could feel that, but I also can see how certain people can kind of get displaced
Right.
because of like these big things. So yeah, so it's one of those like everything where it's like beautiful moments were made because it was here, but then also like you got to deal with like the pressure and the weight and the burden it puts on other people.
Mm-hmm. And staying on New Orleans this year be 20 years since Katrina. How has New
Yeah.
Orleans changed since Katrina? And do you think once that happened, we saw the erasure of some of the culture and of the backbone that made the Crescent
Mm.
City what it is? And like I said, it's 20 years, and has things stayed the same or has it changed for better or worse?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and since of course y'all know from 252, and then, so this is kind of me my analysis from people who live here. I think for me, what I've heard the biggest difference is like neighborhood. So where if you were from say the Treme or say Ninth Ward, to where it wasn't just that you lived there, it was that your granny lived there, your auntie had lived there, your great granddaddy lived there, and that you were rooted in a place, and that y'all had your second lines, y'all had your style, y'all got a history here. And I think Katrina erased all that, where where a a really rough reading would be Katrina created an opportunity for major corporations to now come in, buy up these buildings that have little to no value because right they're like depleted, they're destroyed, people are displaced, so it's like open property into what I might call like the Airbnb-fication of New Orleans, to where now neighborhoods can't really be neighborhoods because like okay, me, my granny, my cousins might live here, but it's like an Airbnb next door. So it's like a different person coming in out of there like every other day in a way that it is difficult to build tradition or to renew traditions in that type of climate. But I will say that I think Black people in New Orleans persevere though to where it looks radically different. But I think what's happening is a reimagining. of that old thing of where we got the music, we got the food, because like this is the thing that sustains us. And I think it's a transitional period where we're trying to find new things to sustain us. And so we mourn what was there. And it's fucked up that it's gone. But I
Mm,
also like to lean into our imagination that we've been through a lot of, when I say we black people, particularly Southern black people, been through a lot of horrible things,
mm,
but we've been able to kind of produce something on the other end of that. And that's kind of what I see as like a person who lives in New Orleans, but who I think I'm like a North Carolina boy. And like
mm.
this is kind of like my seeing of it.
Yeah, you're kind of seeing it with outside eyes since you're not from New
Yeah.
Orleans. New Orleans is your adoptive home, so you're looking at it through a second lens as opposed to the locals who've been there, seen it, done it.
Yeah.
Know about fixing the red beans and whites on wash day, getting the king cake and the
Yeah.
second lines and all the traditions that New Orleans brings, and how a lot of that was lost when Katrina came, and it got me thinking about the recent hurricane that just passed that hit the 828 side of the state with
Yeah.
Asheville and Boone, Cullowhee, out that whole area, and just how, just reopened parts of 40 going that way, one lane only, and how, they're slowly
Mm-hmm.
starting to pick up the pieces and just thinking, I was telling my wife this. I never really went to that side of the state that much, only passing
Mm.
through, maybe to go to, the Great Smoky Mountains one time. But, I never had
Yeah.
an interest to go to Asheville, go to Boone, go to Cullowhee, go to Black Mountain, because I've kind of felt that side
Yeah.
of the state was more like, I'm gonna steer clear of. Although I do hear that App State
Yeah.
is a party school.
Yeah. I went to Western Carolina in Cullowhee, right?
How I want to know, how's your experience in the 828 being African American and just knowing like, oh, because when you think of that side of the state, at least I know
Oh
for
boy.
me, I think of banjos, I think of flags hanging outside of the poles, and other
Oh
flags,
man.
and the racks that be on the back of them pickup trucks.
I'm gonna say whatever your assumption is, you're right. And because I think where we're from in the 252, to me, it's so special in part because and so a lot of folks are like, so 252, Northeast North Carolina, where during slavery, this is where like it's a concentration of like enslaved black folks. And post emancipation, a lot of like the wealthy folks kind of migrate to like Greensboro, Charlotte, and kind of become business owners. And like what gets left is a large amount of black people. And then over time, we kind of get segregated to counties, whatever. And so, which is why if you look at like when people be like, oh, rural people voted for Trump. But I'm like, no, look at North Carolina. These rural counties are blue counties, right? Largely because it's a bunch of black people in these damn blue ass counties. And I
Mm,
think where we're from is so special because we get a mass of rural black people. And then I juxtapose that to the ruralness of Western North Carolina, which is largely like white folks, like just by and large.
mm,
And being a college student there, right? I think being a college student, it shields me from in a way that I'm gonna connect with the black folks on campus. Like as an adult, having to
mm,
live, say in a I don't know if I could do that. But I will say I think when we think about like class, I think there's a lot of connections in the ways that the 828s like Cullowhee, Waynesville, like Ashford, those places, how white folks face a type of economic like violence that black folks in the 252 face,
mm,
but I but then the whiteness of it is complicated to where I think we face a similar thing, but
mm,
our analysis of it is different,
mm,
right? To where it's like now I'm thinking about the exit polls now. Shoot, like Halifax County, Northampton County, like we blue. When you look at the western part, that shit is like red. And it's so interesting where like the things that are weighing us down is so similar. but y'all want to hold on to a Confederate flag. One of them niggas lost, and two, y'all, I think y'all share like a commonality with the folks across this state who marginalized also. And yeah, and so for me, I think as an educational space, I learned my state differently. So I think about
Mhm.
North Carolina differently because like when we grew up around black folks, right? And we know the black South. And I
Right.
think that helped me engage the white South. And I in a way that like not antagonistic, but I think I have a softer spot for rural, poor white people, in part because, right, nigga, if it's only one bar in town, we all going to the same bar. We kicking
Mhm.
it. And then when it comes to like these larger questions, it's difficult for them to kind of see beyond
Mhm.
what what a Donald Trump would sell them, and it's a complicated thing. So yeah, so I love that you asked me that, and I feel bad that it's one of those points where it's like, I don't care how many degrees I got, it is tough to negotiate where my car broke down and some white dude with a Confederate flag in his truck stopped, fixed my car, told me have a nice day, and I never saw him again. And it's like in those types of moments, like how do I make sense of that, right? They got a Confederate flag for what? But he cared for me in that moment, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether to say the other you or thank you. I mean, it definitely looks like you're gonna take me to that other side of town where
You,
where we going? That ain't Cracker Barrel. That ain't Stucky's. Don't worry about it. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. I mean, 252, we do got some places that's like that too. So
oh
definitely
yeah,
make sure you get out of there before dark.
oh
But
yeah,
being from New
oh,
Orleans, I'm sure you could kind of still feel that kind of vibe of, still holding on to that old antebellum South tradition with a lot of those old plantation homes. And,
yeah,
only up until a couple years ago that a lot of the wedding magazines and websites stopped putting plantation homes on
man,
listings so that folks can
yeah,
not have a good time in the place where our ancestors worked, died, and
bro.
God knows what else happened on those lands.
Bro, you know white people getting married inside old prisons now? And it's like
Bruh,
so like
bruh,
it's
for real.
I have no
What?
yeah, where it's like I've seen where like prisons there like have been abandoned for like 20 years and and like the roof is caved in and so the sun can shine inside and it's like a brick is like I have yeah. And I think in part it's cool we're talking about history where it's like how can you divorce the history from the space in a way that yeah, is yeah. So when you said that I was like, man,
But it seems
white
like,
folks,
yeah, but
wow,
it's not to
sometimes.
cut you off, but it seems like what we have is we have an erasure where we don't want the two to coexist, where we want
Yeah.
one narrative, and you're seeing the changing of laws and discourse to
Mm-hmm.
speak on one narrative where we have certain institutions that's either cutting back DI programs or eliminating them altogether. Where if you are a person of color at certain institutions of higher learning, you necessarily don't feel a safe space anymore where it feels you might as well tell me go to the back of the bus, put that sign up that saying I ain't welcome.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, exactly that. And I'm gonna flip it on to us black folks really quick.
Mm,
So because part of what I think what we see with racial issues is, man, like these white folks can't separate the racial, where they're separating the racial history from right. Oh, the plantation may be like aesthetically, right?
mm,
That you can the way you see the sun, like the architecture, like like maybe. But we
mm,
don't see it that way. We see it through a lens of the trauma. So I think
mm,
about like say with black people and say, I don't know, like, do you still like play P. Diddy songs or Kelly's Kale songs? And it's
mm,
like, can we like how do you feel about
How
it?
do
Can
you
we like
can
separate
they
it from
coexist?
Yeah, like how do you feel about it?
I don't know. Like I said, certain things you can't be able to coexist, others you can. But like you said, we look at the South in two different lenses from the architectural, the beautification of it, but you're looking at it from the perspective of the pain, the trauma, the
Mm-hmm.
hurt, the generational curses, and everything that came with, the building of the American South. And like how I mentioned earlier, we're seeing the erasure of telling all the story, and we just want to tell one side of the story. And just thinking about how back home, Halifax County, one county, three separate school districts. How,
Mm-hmm.
bro? Three separate school districts in one county. And depending on where
Mm-hmm.
you draw the line, if you live here, you go to Weldon schools. You live on this other side of the road, you go to Runner Rapids. Two totally different programs. Runner Rapids get all the money. Folks in Gaston, Weldon, surrounding areas got to go to Runner Rapids, spend the money. All that
Yep.
money is getting poured into Runner Rapids Greater School District, whereas Weldon City Schools, Halifax County Schools, Northampton
Yep.
County Schools, our area is getting the short end of the stick.
Yep. And I talk about that in my book where logically and rationally, economically, it doesn't make sense. You have one county and you have these different districts, and you would be bringing in, and I think maybe a couple thousand students at every, like, I'm talking about all grade levels total,
Mm,
and the way you draw up those districts. And so if you live behind, say, Challoner Middle School, which is quote unquote the white middle school, you can't go to that middle school because directly behind that middle school is all black neighborhoods that you get shipped to another school. And it's strategically designed that it's an enclave of white folks. And whenever it's like when a Walmart got built, and like that whole shopping center is technically welded, but we redraw the lines to say this is Runner Rapids. And so like the taxes goes to the white schools, and then the black kids who are maybe inches away from those like businesses get little to nothing. And and then folks bring a Supreme Court case, and then the city, I'm gonna say, intentionally makes it not a big deal because people don't even know it's a Supreme Court case about integrating schools. and and then people want to say though race and racism is thing in the past. You can't, right, make me pay for what my great 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 grandfather did, when really we're thinking literally about small children being deprived of just basic needs in education, largely just because you don't want black kids in
right,
class with white kids. And
right.
and, and it's it doesn't blow, and the and I'm mad that it doesn't shock me in a way that what I do think it, like, so when you told me about the music artist who was from Weldon, I think it does make those stories more powerful though, because I mean it speaks to what we always do. We kind of like take the little that we're given and we kind of make magic out of it. Like we
Mhm,
do these like amazing things.
right,
And for me, those amazing things don't have to result in a bunch of money. It don't have to result in fame.
right.
That shit can literally result in making like the way we style our clothes or the way we do this,
Mhm.
and just given the context in which we live, and as people in 2025 actively trying to disempower small black kids, but those black kids, the niggas be fresh regardless. And to me, it's something about that.
Yeah, just making lemons out of lemonade. I mean, if you ain't had the money to go to Cayman's and Rocky Mount, if you know, you know. You went to Maxway, you went to Super 10, you went to Sugar Hill
Mm-hmm.
Fashions, you went to somebody's store or somebody's flea market to take whatever you could find and afford, stylize it, appropriate it to make it your own because you knew you was gonna get fresh to go to skating station on Friday, Saturday night when they
Hey,
had them dances. I remember them dances. I ain't go that much, but when I did go, it was a time. It was a time. It was a time. Weldon was
I,
in the building. Northwest was in the building. Southeast was in the building. West was in the building. East was in the building. Some of the Runner Rapids contingency was in the building, but not a lot of yellow jackets. But it was where just thinking about the skating station and how the line would be wrapped around the skating rink full of kids. I had some of my friends who went to high school was telling me we would all get dropped off at the mall, Becca Village. If you know, you know.
Mhm.
I don't know why they needed a directory in the center of the mall because you can see everything.
You kind
But
of
they,
funny.
yeah, but they
You
would get
funny as
dropped
hell.
off though, right? And they would just go to Becca Village, just pose and everything. Then they would walk to the skating station and be in that line and forget about, I live in a poor town and with not a lot of resources and not a lot to do. You made
Yeah.
your own fun and how it was where you got to see like, okay, living in this part of the state is not bad. But it's just that we just get so overlooked because when you think of North Carolina, first you think of the triangle, the triad,
Mhm.
Outer Banks, everything further down, that I kind of feel 252 and especially the rural 252 gets forgotten in the
Mm.
story in how, the saving grace for our home area, at least for me, when I think is the paper mill. Because if that paper mill were to close, our area will really go down the crapper because I mean it employs a lot of people. My stepdad
Yeah.
worked there, my uncle worked there. It was one of those jobs where you could graduate on high school on a Friday, get put on Monday, and work your good
Mhm.
career. But as we're looking at with a lot of those jobs, people are suffering health wise because you're not in the most safe working conditions. Given what we saw, what took place at the
Yeah.
Boyheads playing in Jared, which is not too far from where we live, and knowing that a lot of folks in my
That's
area
it.
commute to go to Jared to go work at that plant.
My brother worked there. Yeah, my brother he used to work there. Boy said, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when I saw that and just thinking how, that's the main economy of the town, and when you're going through something like that, it really puts down the whole area. And like I said, folks from even though we're close to Virginia, it's in driving distance enough to where people from our home area will go commute, go work because the pay was better. But like I said, you're putting yourself physically on the line because you're probably not having the most safe work conditions, not
Yeah.
sanitary, and the mask may not be the best thing in the world. And just
Yeah.
how, it's only when we kind of look at it through a lens of are we really doing our people in these areas service or disservice by saying these are the only jobs that you can get that can pay you good, that don't require a lot of education, but you can work here 20, 30 years, get good pay, but you may not live to enjoy it. Same thing when you think about, the Reese's plant on 903 going to Halifax
Mhm.
or I think I want to say it's Cummings. You
Yeah.
know, the
Yep.
Cummings plant,
Yep.
like you're going on 301, going out that
Yep.
way, just
Cummins.
like a lot of those jobs, when you think about it, like I said, manual labor, that's the type of jobs that at least I know a lot of the older men from my hometown end up working those jobs. And I remember one in particular, when I went to go shake his hand, he shook my hand. He told me, keep your hands soft. You got soft hands. And
Yeah.
I didn't understand what he meant at the time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until when I was in college and I understood, it was like, you got this. You got
Yeah.
book smarts. Books gonna take you out of here. You don't need to get those calluses and creams like me because I'm working 20, 30, 40, 80 hours a week at this paper mill. You got a chance to do something that a lot of people don't. And you kind of feel that at least probably from your perspective too, when you went from Western Carolina to Virginia Tech and now at Tulane, just kind of thinking how a lot of people from my area into school and making something kind of feels where it's like you doing something because I was like first generation college student and knowing
Same.
that
Yeah.
I don't have nobody to help me navigate filling out a FAFSA form, how to make sure I balance workload, extracurricular activities. So you're kind of left without a roadmap to guide you. So you kind of learn on your excuse me, on your own. And whereas now with the younger generation coming in, they're kind of looking at it as, is college one big finesse scam? Because I've seen
Mm,
my parents paying six figures in loans and
yeah,
drowning, whereas me, I can go straight out of high school, go to a trade school at half the cost or little to no, work a good job, get my license certificates, and be that free. So where do you think the state of education, and I'm saying that to say this, where do you think the state of education is going now with a lot of the younger generation thinking, is it really worth me going into debt? Especially when you think about private institutions too, because no matter where you go, no matter where you're from, that private tuition price hits different, which is why I never considered a private school or
yeah.
going out of state because I knew that I was going to have the means to pay for it. Let me just stay in state and go to school.
Yeah. I mean, before I just want to just like honor kind of everything you just said, where it makes me think about my boy Mark Lamont Hill, like in his book, where he says basically the options black people get is like we have to choose how we die. So is it gonna be I'm gonna die from poverty, not having a job, and everything that comes with that, or am I gonna work at a paper mill that's gonna make me more likely to have asthma, to make me more likely to have these respiratory issues, and those are the options we get. And I know for me, I was hospitalized for like asthma, breathing conditions most of my life until I went to college. And when I moved away, right, and it kind of and not thinking about how just the environment I live in, right, was just kind of predisposing me to these pollutants. And but what's the alternative? Not to have jobs for the entire community. And no, and so yes, I just want to honor what you said, where like you laying out right the dilemma, right, for particularly southern rural black folks. And yeah, same as you, first generation college student, a nigga that's struggling with loans. Trump is messing up my repayment plans and whatever. And the question you asked me is a beautiful one. It's complicated. So on one hand, I know what college did for me, and independently of a job, it gave me the tools to better understand my mama, my grandma. It gave me a language to talk about myself. Man, it let me meet some of my closest friends. Man, I met some fine women. I became an adult through college in a contained space around people my age. And that experience, I think, should be given to everybody. To where to be 18 years old and just have to go into the world, that's like a tough ask, right? And but I think college gives you like a container to make mistakes, to ask questions, to learn, to be independent. And I don't know how you can produce that outside of college in our current set of arrangements. On the other end, college is high as hell, and it's going to put you in a financial precarity for the rest of your life. And depending on what you want from your life, I'm not sure if it's worth it for certain people. And so it's tricky where my intuitive thing would be rich folks ain't telling their kids not to go to college, even though their kids gonna be rich regardless. And then so I know that they see college as a type of socialization, cultural thing. And so
Mm,
I know that's what college is for because like rich kids don't need to go to college for what? But their parents know that it's about these cultural, social things that
mm,
helps you become a human being.
mm,
But also, I don't want to map my advice on what rich people do, and so it's tricky to where I could never tell a kid to go to college if I'm not the one that's going to financially pay for it. To where it is hard for me to tell them to take on a life of debt for these things, and so for me, I think I always say, whether I pay my student loans back or not, shit, they can't take back my degree, they can't take back any of this, and I just want to let people know the state that if I could go back, I would go in debt over and over and over again because of the way my life looks. I couldn't imagine it without it. And the individual level, I would charge students to pursue education by any means possible. But at a structural level, simultaneously, I'm advocating that university should just be, it's just an extension of high school. And that we need to make a way to where becoming an informed citizen doesn't put you $200,000 in debt. And so yeah, and so it's tricky, right? And kind of balancing how I think about it.
Yeah.
But no, but thank you for asking me that though.
Yeah, man. One thing college did for me, it taught you how to have fun being broke.
Hey,
Dog,
that
remember when
part.
the refund checks were hitting the mail? This is before they had it with direct deposit. Boy, you used to go to your mailbox. You see that check from the
Man.
financial aid department? I'm gonna tell you the first thing I did with my refund check. I went to a state employee's credit union machine, endorsed that thing, put that thing in that thing, and said, "Hey, I'm going to Chili's tonight."
Let me tell you how broke I was. I got my refund check and didn't have enough gas money, no money to even get to a bank. So I literally got my refund check. I mean, a couple thousand, about 4,000, and I got to borrow $4 to get transportation to the bank. But once I got to the bank, I cashed out. I was good.
So you were ready to go outside to insert nightclub here. Now with your students, do you see the current generation of college students going outside like our generation, or do you think with them being very much tied into social media and on their phones that their experience of going outside and being in the nightclub life has fallen by the wayside with today's
Yeah,
students?
and I think for young folks, yeah, they have a different world where I think gender politics are a lot different now. Where I think a lot of things we did probably going to be called sexual assault today, as it should be. And
Yep.
I think just because that politic is different, I, and I think young men should be more conscious of kind of how they engage. And so I know that structures them. But to your point, I think, yeah, to where I hear, I mean, like I'm old, so like my students don't really tell me a lot. But I do hear like, oh, he saw me somewhere out. He'll wait till the next day to message me online. And studies show that how people meet today is less by somebody approaching somebody in person. And so yes, I do think technology and that access is kind of stealing a piece of that kind of like walking up. It's like in our age,
Mhm.
everybody get curved. That's just part of the game. Like you,
Yeah, yeah,
everybody just want to
yeah,
get
everybody
curved.
shot their shot. You was gonna get
No,
shot down, but you had to go shoot your shot or college night, whatever that night was. You and your crew got fresh. Somebody had the car. If you didn't have the car, maybe your area had a bus that took you around to different hot spots in the area. Higher education, rapid transit at UNCG. If you know, you know. But it was a time to be alive, being outside in them streets. On the times that I did go, I made sure to sit by the exit because I knew the element was going to be in the building. And with me going to school in the triad, being
yeah.
from UNCG, A&T right there. You got some people from Elon coming. You got Winston-Salem State. You probably got some Wake Forest here and there. But the element was going to be heavy in the building. It was going to smell like dank or loud or sour diesel or whatever other odious smell that you smoke. But I made
Hmm.
sure to sit by the exit because I knew it was gonna get live whenever somebody stepped on somebody's shoe or messed up somebody's white tee. I mean, this was back when we were going to Foot Locker getting
Yeah,
4 for 20, double, triple X, 4X white tees, getting
longest. Yeah.
polos, thinking we were fresh, ATL Snap, Trump, early T Pain, and just being outside and in those movements, like you said, how a lot of the behavior now would be considered misogynistic, very non pro woman, and would be frowned upon. But it was the sign of time, especially, if you know about them long bus trips, those activity bus rides with the lights went dark. I never sat in the back. Always sat in the front. I was the nerd that the dude in the Unforgivable video was talking about. I was that guy, but I knew the action went down in the back, and I would recommend any prospective high school student that wants to go to college, if they have Upward Bound, go to
I
Upward.
was Upward Bound.
I was
I
Upward
did
Bound
Upward Bound.
too. Where did you do your Upward Bound at?
We was at I did the one where we was at Warren County.
Okay, what
So,
school did y'all go for y'all summer session? Did y'all
oh,
go to
well, we went to
ECU?
Elizabeth City.
Y'all went to Liberty City? Okay. Yeah, so I did mine at Showan because it was West, East, Hertford, and Bertie. So we all did our summer at Showan.
So yeah, so I was like, we was Halifax County and Warren County. So yeah, and so it was like us, Northwest, Warren County. Yeah, I didn't know they had two separate
Yeah,
ones.
yeah, they had separate ones. And I also volunteered for a summer working for the Warren County Welding Upward Bound program. They did theirs
Yeah,
at ECU. And when I went there, I was like, oh, maybe I should have bumped up ECU on my list of schools to go to because ECU was like my last choice because I had gotten to
mm,
UNCG at that point, and that was my first choice where I wanted to go. So I didn't bother sending my application to East Carolina. But I was like, oh,
yeah,
East Carolina's a pretty live. Especially, I heard that Greenville's a party area though.
yeah. Halloween time. I mean Halloween time. Hey, I don't know how it is now, but I know when we were in college,
Mm,
yeah, like ECU was the
mm.
place. But I think you made the right choice though. I would have took a Greensboro over Greenville.
Yeah. Now, both of us being PWI alums, it kind of felt you had your HBCU ness inside of the PWI, where you had to have that safe space to navigate being at a predominantly white institution. Where knowing, I know at least for me, when I got to G, it was my first time being around a whole bunch of white kids and interacting with
Yeah,
white teachers and coming from a kind of all black high school environment, for me, it was like, oh, do I belong here? Can I cut it? Do I have what it takes to succeed at this level, or am I just here to just put the color in the brochure?
yeah. Nah. I felt the same, which is why I think I did so well because I was like, damn, I'm in class with a bunch of white people. I don't want to look silly. So I read a lot, I studied a lot, and I think that made me focus so much. Then like you realize it's a bunch of dumb white people here. It's a bunch of smart white people, a bunch of dumb black people, it's a bunch of smart black people. And
Mm,
and I realized that right, race wasn't gonna be the thing really that determined what your how you perform.
mm,
But having not been in class with white people before and living in a world that it tells me that white people have a type of premium, like just coming into it, I was like, I had to adjust and kind of figure out where I fit into all of it.
hmm And then that's where I also learned too the importance of social capital. Being in
Mm-hmm.
rooms, networking, like you mentioned earlier, rich kids primarily go to college for the social aspect for networking because, some of those kids probably going to be future doctors, future lawyers, future senators, presidents, somebody that you're going to need probably somewhere down the line. So it's for that social aspect that's going to help you further establish yourself along. Now we're gonna pivot to something serious. I'm sure you heard about what happened down at I believe it was Southern with Caleb Wilson passed away. He was a young man who was
Mm-hmm.
pledging Omega Psi Phi and ended up passing away. And with you being a Divine Nine member yourself of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, what do you think needs to be done overall to be able to curtail, the hazing and all the things that we hear from the outside looking in with these organizations, but knowing, they were created to help us network and to build community, brotherhood, sisterhood during a time where we weren't able to join the majority white fraternities and sororities, and we have to carve out safe spaces for ourselves. But when we hear stories like this, we see it from the lens of, all fraternity sororities should be abolished and that more is not done
Mm.
on the national level to make sure that there's a zero tolerance policy for hazing. I want to get your take on that with you being a Divine Nine member yourself and what can be done to be able to, curtail, these
Yeah.
acts of violence.
Yeah, and I hear some people say, well, it's just not just the black fraternities, it's the white fraternities. But for me, I think why we exist is different from them. And so I don't even necessarily want or need to make a comparison. And so for me, part of what I think has to happen is for fraternities, so I'm just talking for fraternities in particular, is a reimagination of what masculinity is. So, is masculinity being able to take as much pain without breaking? Is masculinity being able to pull the baddest chick on campus? And if it is, right, is that inherently healthy? Is that what we want to build organizations around? Or can we have a different type of masculinity to where man, it's about who inspires the young dudes on campus, right? To actually show up to class, to actually engage with the community. And then I think if we had a reevaluation of like what mattered, I think the processes then would flow from that. So where if what mattered was, oh man, like this nigga, like he makes me think about my life and my relationship with like my mama, women differently, then intake processes have to then follow the type of person that we need. And so I can imagine, right? Okay, say even if we don't be physically violent, but if we still have this like really rigid idea of masculinity, no fucking, I ain't gonna beat you to death. I might just emotionally abuse you. I might just deprive you of these things. And then so for me, it's thinking about can we reconfigure whoever goes through the intake process, what we want on the outside, other side of that. Once we reimagine that, then we do the intake process differently. And so for me, it's like being a fraternity is like, oh, well, if he didn't go through a hard process, that nigga ain't real, that nigga paper. And so for me, I think you can still have a really tough, rigid process that weeds out people who just might want the name and it still be a humanizing process. But
Mm,
that only depends on who do you want on the other side of this. And so for me, I think it takes a lot of that intimate internal work to say, nigga, we want men who look and show up like this. And to get that, we might need then to, I don't know, let's push them academically. Like, let's be hard on like how do they show up around their mama, their grannies? Like, oh, is this nigga confrontational with all women on? And I can imagine different ways in which we can assess people that
mhm,
doesn't rely on like basic, nigga, if you can handle me beating you to death, then you tough, which is actually not that difficult. But I think if we can have a different type of conversation about, damn, nigga, like what type of nigga would want to show up for us? Like what type of nigga would I want to show up? Like if my granny's sick, and how do we then build a process for
mm,
that? But I think black men lean too heavily into the standard, I would say white American men set, which is you need to be able to defend yourself at all costs. You need to be able to make a lot of money. Niggas was enslaved. You don't have a right to self defense. You don't make anything. And so those ideals was imposed upon us. But can
mm,
we think about these other ways in which we can show up for people?
mm.
And for me, like that's what I think about it.
Yeah,
And also just to honor him where it's like, yeah, man, it's tragic, right?
yeah.
That the road for us to love each other leads to my demise.
Yeah, yeah, man. Which is, for me, I was thinking about pledging one of those organizations in college. I'm not gonna say the name, but you kind of sort of know probably what organization I was thinking about, probably based on knowing me and everything like that. We ain't gonna say the name, but we'll talk about it offline. But
Oh, okay, okay.
just how, you know, when I was on campus, that's who I knew ran it, especially the dudes that their game went up after probate. at least at UNCG, that's where all the black people came out when it was probate. When somebody was crossing, whether it was Kappa, whether it was Alpha, whether it was Sigma, DST, SG Row, AKA, Zetas, everybody was gonna come out and show support. And then once the reveal came, it was where it was like, oh, this person I went to class with is now this person, and just kind of seeing that maturation into sisterhood or brotherhood, their respective organization, and just when up, okay, I'm gonna tell you this right now. If you go out to a club, if you see one of the members start hopping or strolling, move, move out the way. I made a mistake one time. I was at this nightclub and some Sigmas was getting ready to stroll, and I was in their way. I got bopped in the head, and I learned right then and there. As soon as I somebody see somebody starting, I moved out the way. And I want to know, how did "Wipe Me Down" become the unofficial song for y'all? I mean, it's the perfect shimmy roll song, cane twirling song. I mean, it's definitely screams, let me get my suit, my tie, my suspenders, my bow tie, my
Oh,
cane, my jacket, everything else that come with a certain organization. And just it's just certain songs you associate with certain
yeah.
organizations. Cause like when I hear Atomic Dog, all I can hear is somebody barking. It could be one person, one cue. It's dun dun dun. Started off. Started off. They don't care if nobody with them. They'll be hopping all night long. And I've been to
Mhm.
one Q probate where it was a solo line. I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
ooh, you solo dolo. You ain't got nobody, so it's all on you. But I'm
Hold it
like,
down.
but it
Hold
almost
it
kind of seemed
down.
like, do you think from your perspective of you being Greek that if you went solo dolo, do you get more respect from those that had a normal process where you had multiple go through it as opposed to it's just you by yourself?
Man, to me, solo, yeah, you get all the respect. You carry the weight of the expectations. You carry the weight, like even intellect, like academically, where like the line has to have a certain GPA. They have to do a certain amount of community service hours, and those things don't fluctuate based on people. I mean, at so at my university, it was they need to do this many. I don't care if it's one of five or six. And so for me, even like academically, right, community service wise, and then like the pledging process where everybody's looking at you. And also it's in my pledging process, my line brothers, just the emotional love they gave me. I don't know if I would have done it without that. And then so to do it void of that, it's difficult for me to imagine. And so for me, it speaks to a type one. I think the organization itself has to nurture that one person,
Mm,
but also to then to have the weight on you, and if you to stand 10 toes down, like, hey, I don't care if nobody here with me.
mm,
Hey, you get my respect.
right.
That shit is heavy. You got it.
Right. So how would you say band culture is down in Louisiana? Because of course with the rivalry between Southern and Grambling and everything that comes with the Bayou Classic, and would you
Yeah.
say it's more I would say fierce and competitive as opposed to like back in NC or in Atlanta where you have a higher concentration of HBCUs, whereas in Louisiana it's not really that many HBCUs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing about us being in North Carolina. There's so many HBCUs, and so like the co, and I think here since it's so few, I think it makes that relation a little more intense. And then with band culture in particular, so you think about like Mardi Gras, like in New Orleans, being in a band means something.
Mm,
Like you get you participate in Mardi Gras, you doing second lines, you even like when you leave, like just as an individual, like if you live in a city and you play an instrument and you go perform, it, it, it ingrains you in a city in an intimate way to be. I mean, particularly depending on what you play, right? So if you
Right.
like a brass instrument, nigga, you are New Orleans, like you carry this history, and so I think it's a real deep, intimate relationship between your school, and it's also about you yourself is like we talked about before, carrying a type of legacy that bands and sound, particularly brass bands, matter so much for the city to where like you like a celebrity.
Right.
And it's like and it's like what not too many places you can be in a say even a high school band and on certain days of the year you get to claim a celebrity. And so yeah.
Mm,
But I don't play any instrument, so this is me just kind of watching.
mm.
And yeah. What about you? Do you play?
No, I'm musically not gifted at all. But just how we mentioned, high school band, big deal, especially when you got to perform at the Christmas parade, going up and down Roanoke Avenue. North End to West Band, rest in peace, Mr. Freeman. I'm gonna still say this, 10 toes down on business. Baddest band in the 252. Better than Weldon, better than Northwest, better than Southeast, better than Warren County, better than Bertie, better than Hereford. I want all the smoke. I'm gonna climb the chimney. I want to find it. I'm standing on business. Northampton West Band, the Marching Hurricanes, Lady Ice, baddest band in the 252. If you ain't know, now you know. But just thinking about how when you were in band, it was like a calling card as opposed to like, oh, you're on the basketball team, you're on the football team when you were in band,
Yeah.
especially the halftime shows, because the halftime show was pretty much almost in the same stylings of HBCUs, where it's show style, where you're going to get a show
Yeah.
at halftime. You're not going to go to the concession stand or go to the bathroom when West Band was performing. You was going to go sit in those bleachers because you knew Mr. Monte Freeman was going to have them right. He was going to have them tight, and it was just a thrill for me to watch them on those Friday nights and to hear them play when their practices would be going on at the same time football practice would be going on, and just seeing their shows and being well put together, and you're kind of seeing the stylings of HBCU band showmanship and a lot of PWI bands. Some of them are playing Down for My or Neck, and I'm like, how did Net get culturally appropriated? This is new to me, because I kind of felt like it happened when Drumline came out. Because once Drumline came out, everybody wanted to be in band because of Drumline. And everybody knew, even though it was about Atlanta A&T, everybody knew they were talking about North Carolina A&T.
That's what I felt. That's what I felt.
I felt A&T probably owes Nick Cannon some residuals because enrollment in A&T probably went up because of that show. Zoe Saldana probably owes a part of her Oscar because of Drumline and because of what A&T means to band culture. And I don't know if you've seen this video. It's an old video on YouTube, but it's a band teacher doing band in middle school, and he's having his kids play Ice Cream Man by Master P.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
I'm like, if these kids knew that he wasn't talking about Baskin Robbins, Ben and Jerry's, or Haagen Dazs, he's talking about that other ice cream where ain't no lick for free. It's gonna cost you 20 bones. If you know, you
Hey,
know. But what's your take on a lot of people when Kendrick was first named the halftime show artist for the Super Bowl? A lot of people felt that should have gone to Wheezy, with them being
yeah.
in New Orleans and seeing how much Cash Money meant to New Orleans, that he didn't get that look, and seeing now with the Hot Boys, they're out doing shows, and just seeing how that whole movement, it was a special time in music with both Cash Money and No Limit being from New Orleans, and how two different labels, distinctive sounds, different personalities were able to have music in such a chokehold. in movies
Yeah.
too, because Master P gave us I Got the Hookup and I'm Bounty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's tough because I think hip hop is so regional to where place matters for Black people a lot. And I think I become hesitant to where, quote unquote, the stages that accommodate or that cater largely to rich white people are defining spaces for Black people. Because I
Mhm.
feel like, shit, like, you could throw on a concert, bring out New Orleans on your own. What? Because ain't nobody from New Orleans can even afford to go to the Super Bowl. So they're not going to be in there physically. But I
Mhm.
do think, right, a way in which, so I feel like for the Super Bowl to honor this city, to find people from the city, that's a way for them to honor them. I feel
Mhm.
like for Wayne to honor the city, he already does that, right? And so I think then too. So yeah, so the Sia Weezy headline of Super Bowls in New Orleans, right? I think it creates like a beautiful moment. But I
Right.
also can think I hope we love Lil Wayne, Hot Boys, BG, Juvenile, Manny enough to where if they just did something together, the city would be just as lit for us supporting them. Then we wouldn't need a Super Bowl to be that conduit for
Right.
that. And so
Right.
yeah, and it's tough. Like, so people was wanting to debate, whose discography is better, Kendrick or Wayne's, which to me was like irrelevant to. I think it's about what's the purpose of the halftime show. And I
Mhm.
think the Super Bowl, the NFL in particular, to kind of salvage its relationship to Black people, wants a particular type of Black aesthetic that I
Right.
think Kendrick could deliver in a
Right.
way that a Wayne probably couldn't. So
Right.
Wayne would have had Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, like okay, yeah, but in a way that an international Black audience to kind of help bandage how Black folks have felt about the NFL since Cap. I think, oh, if Kendrick likes this NFL, why can't all of the other progressive Black people like? And I think Kendrick does that role for the NFL in a way that
Right.
Wayne wouldn't have gave him that type of right
Yeah.
leverage.
Yeah, and it made me think back when the NFL had the Super Bowl in Atlanta a couple years ago when the Falcons choked to the Patriots. I'm like, imagine if they had a real Atlanta halftime show with JD, Yin Yang, Raheem the Dream, DJ Taz, all those Atlanta acts, DJ Unk, rest in peace,
Yeah.
all of those, and just thinking about how, when I first heard Whistle While You Twerk, right, I was like, they sampled Snow White, Whistle While You Work. See, that's probably why the
That
Snow
was
White movie flopped
the what?
because they didn't do Whistle While You Twerk in the movie. Because
Oh,
had Snow White been popping out on the whale while Happy, Sleepy, Grumpy, Doc, and
man.
all their friends was getting on Snow White like she was dancing at Club Nikki, then maybe
Can
this movie would have been a hit.
can I tell you how like Southern I am?
Uh,
So so I was humming that song, and my girl's like, "Why are you humming Snow White?" It's like no fucking Snow White, and I didn't know because I've never seen Snow White, so
Me
I
neither.
didn't know it. And then, but like everything about
Mm,
like history, I didn't know it came from it until she's like, "No, that's Snow White." So I like,
mm.
okay, let me go look. And it's no, so you saying that, right? It's like what it points out the genius in it. And also like, damn, like the song is so good that I can have an opinion about it independently of the movie. But yeah, but I just love the fact that
Right,
you mentioned
right. But I'm like, who at Disney cleared this? Was it in public domain when Mr. Colin Paul produced it? Because Walt Disney would have been spitting in his grave. Like, they done miscegenated my song. Mickey and Minnie twerking, Goofy twerking on Daisy, Pluto popping it. I mean, it was an anthem. You had to be there when Yin Yang Twins dropped. Man, You remember them dances like Stacy in the Wood because it was a time to be alive. You in them sweat boxes in the gym dance. You put the picnic tables back, the cafeteria tables back. You in there sweating, the lights off. Ain't nobody
Ah,
looking. Like I said, the behavior would be totally unacceptable now, but back then
mhm.
it was where it was wild. And then thinking about when Miami had the Super Bowl, nah, that
Yeah.
couldn't have been on TV though. That would have been an after hours show if they would have brought Uncle Luke and everybody on there because well, I was listening to Bomani Jones on his
Uh,
podcast. He was talking with one of his guys that he did guest contributions with. He had brought up the point that pretty much Southern rap, Uncle Luke, it was like aggressive aerobics. Bend it over, touch your toes, pop that P, pop that A. We want some PA. You know, and I'm thinking about some teachers probably somewhere telling our students, test downs, pencils up, test down,
hey,
the way we like to learn. That's the way we like to. I'm like,
that's kind of fire,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, you may, hey, maybe use that with your students. Test downs, pencil
Kind
up.
of
Hey,
fire.
we want a degree. Hey, we want a degree. Hey, we want a PhD. Hey, we want a PhD. Now don't stop. Get it. Don't stop. Get
Oh,
it. Man,
man,
but I'm telling you though, Uncle Luke does not get his flowers for what he did for
at
Southern
all,
hip hop. When we think about this man stood 10
at
toes
all.
down against the Supreme Court, saying, I'm gonna put out my lyrics how I wanna. You can't tell me how to censor my music. And
Hmm.
he won. And I think now he's starting to get more recognition for
Yeah,
what he did for hip hop and also too I think because of the phenomenon that's boots on the ground, I'm thinking Southern Soul is starting to get more of a national
it
recognition because for
is.
some people, Southern Soul is an acquired taste. But as you and I know, that's all we heard growing up in the
Yeah,
252 at somebody's cookout. You heard
yeah,
Electric Slide, you heard Lattimore, Roy C., Clarence Carter, Betty Wright, rest in peace, and Denise LaSalle, and those records you could make a good living as a Southern Soul artist touring certain parts of the US and not
mhm,
go national. Once again, tying back to that regional aspect and
yeah.
how what is your take on just seeing Southern Soul getting more of a national prominence and just seeing how, you know, Uncle Luke now is getting more of his flowers for what he did for rap?
Yeah, man, I submitted. I'm not gonna say the publication name, an essay about Southern Soul 5 years ago. People, nobody would even respond to me, and it's because so the essay was trying to do this thing to where I was saying I'm part of the trap music generation in a way that like my granny, right? They listen like Luther, but Southern Soul was like it did this type of generational work to where at
Mm,
the cookout, the little kids, like the teenagers, the grannies, the mamas, Southern Soul connected us. And I was trying to like do this type of essay like 5 years ago.
mm,
And nobody was feeling like Southern Soul. Like,
mm,
what's that? In a way, and so I kind of like put it aside in a way that now it's it feels what I mean. This is gonna be like the like the narcissistic piece of me. I feel good that my granny, my community gave me the vision to see what was coming. Where I
mm,
don't think like I'm special, but I think the folks from 252 had just been vibing to it in a way that and like southern folks right across like Memphis, Louisiana, Alabama, and now but I would say I'm kind of scared though. Because
mm.
part of what I love about it is that it does something for us, like in the South, us black,
Right,
and it does this interesting
right,
thing.
right,
And so part of me is like, when Southern Soul starts to get played at NFL games, and
right,
like and the people in the audience doing the dances, what's lost in that transition
right,
when
right,
there's a bunch of scholars researching and writing these essays and they're teaching Southern Soul at universities. What's lost in
right.
translation,
Mm-hmm.
and so part of me is happy because right I love the brilliance of Southern Black people, but I'm always hesitant when our brilliance now becomes mainstream.
Right.
What happened? And then, but I mean, I know what's gonna happen. We're just gonna do something
Right.
different, and like we're gonna like keep the culture moving. But yeah, yeah. But
Mhm.
what about you? Like, how do you see it kind of moving and working? Because like boots on the ground, hey man, that's
I mean,
turning streets up.
it's jamming. I didn't know they were doing the dance with the fans though, but like you said, Southern Soul kind of has its own in club where only a select few know about it, and you kind of want it to stay to yourself and not lose its luster once mainstream
Yeah.
gets a hold of it. But mainstream kind of got bits and pieces of it over the years, over the decades. I mean, Christian Townsend
Yeah.
Hollis Run DMC sampled "Backdoor Santa" by Clarence Carter.
Mm.
And I think UGK sampled "Let's Straighten It Out" by Lattimore, and just like a lot of those records, like you mentioned, tied us together. I mean, "Tonight's the Night" by Betty Wright was sampled
Yeah.
for "I Wanna Sex You Up, Color Me Bad," sampled by Candyman for "Knocking Boots." "No
That's
Pain, No
right.
Gain," classic, grew up on that. "After the Pain," classic, grew up on that. "Stroking," I had no business singing that at 5. No, but I grew up with it. I thought he was talking about smoking at first when I first heard it, but it was
Me too.
I was like, why is he talking about smoking? Why do I have to go in the back room when those gold Miller Genuine draft bottles came out and the blue lights came on? I'm like, oh, that's why. But it kind of got me thinking about Go Go. Go Go went through that
Mm,
same thing when it was trying to break nationally, once EU debut crossover and how they got signed to a major label and they were trying to take a regional sound to make it national.
yeah.
And it's like, it's okay to be regional. Not everything is meant to go nationwide, just like how
Yes.
Chuck Brown is loved all throughout the DMV. He has a statue, a park, and I don't know if you know, he's from 252.
I did not know
Yeah,
that.
I think he was born in, I want to say Gaston or Jackson, somewhere around there, but he lived there for like a short amount of time before moving up to DC. But just thinking
Mm,
how, Go Go, that's particularly, DMV, because I remember when I first heard Rare Essence do the Go Go version of Pieces of Me, the hardest of the hard dudes was singing
mm,
that record. And I'm like, huh? You singing this reworked Ashley Simpson record at this nightclub? I mean, Hiding Hair sample Busted Loose by Chuck Brown. And it became a worldwide smash finale.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like I said, people have been getting these regional sounds in their mainstream music for years, but because if you're not from that region, you're not gonna know. But
Yeah.
you're slowly been giving it in. Now I want to tie this up, finish up with this. I believe this year is going to be the last year for Dreamville, and
Yeah.
it's coming up shortly. I think next weekend or so. Just what's your thoughts on that and how J. Cole, along with Rhapsody, Knife One have been putting NC on their backs,
Yeah.
repping for hip hop because I always felt for the longest time our state was the victim of being caught up in the middle because you have to pass through
Yeah.
North Carolina when going south
Yeah.
or north. So we got everything. We got New York, we got Atlanta, and I think for the longest we were trying to figure out what would fit on the
Yeah.
national scene. Whereas I felt it really wasn't until, Little Brother that North
Mm-hmm.
Carolina really felt comfortable saying, okay, we're from NC. We're not going to try to sound like Atlanta. We're not going to sound like New York. We're not going to sound like we're from the West Coast. We're just going to have our own vibe. And just to see, J. Cole carry the torch, 252's own Rhapsody out of Snow
Yeah.
Hill, shout to Greene County, doing her thing and seeing everything that she's done and other artists come out of North Carolina. Just how it kind of feels like, we can still take our shirt off, twist around the hair, spin it like a helicopter, like Petey
Yeah.
Pablo did, and just how it kind of felt like it feels like North Carolina now can say we got a sound and identity of our own.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say at NPR when y'all did that map. of hip hop, and y'all was looking at hip hop in the South, and y'all ain't had North Carolina, y'all should have had North Carolina as central to the story of hip hop. In part because of what you just said is it right to where we get collapsed by our geography as like so 252. I think like we are like smack dab in the middle of New York and Miami. Like literally, like you driving down 95, you coming through here, and I feel like young folks there, we hear these different sounds, and then when you look at a J. Cole, Rhapsody, I'm the baby. I'm gonna even give you your because I mean you North Carolina, and I think the brilliance of what North Carolina artists have been able to do is that they can offer us North Carolina sensibilities, and it can sound different. And I
Mm,
think when people think about a regional sound, they want to hear the same notes, the same tempo, the same. And I think North Carolina has done this really interesting thing to where it sounds different, to where like a Cole and a Baby don't sound the same. But I think the way in which they signify, it feels so Carolina to me. And I think, right, 10 years from now, when they tell the story, well, I'll say like of 60 years of hip hop, to not include a North Carolina in that narrative, it's going to be one, you don't really understand the history of hip hop, and two,
mm,
it's like a blatant erasure. And so
mm,
yeah, and so I think from the mainstream artists to even the local artists I work with, I
mm,
think the way they take what's given and produce these narratives to how North Carolina and like even beyond the music to me offers an interesting reimagination of the South. In part because
mm,
for me, we're up South, like we're kind of like high up there,
mm.
but we still so southern, and we offer a type of narrative that you can't get nowhere else.
No,
And yeah,
no, no, you surely can't. It's just like you going to Vegas or other parts of the country that's putting Bojangles. It ain't the real thing. They ain't selling bone-in chicken. They're only selling boneless. They don't have Cajun filet biscuits. They don't have Bowberry biscuits. Real deal. I mean, if you want the real deal, come to North Carolina, go to somebody's Bojangles, primarily a couple miles off the interstate. Because if you go off of the interstate exit, it ain't gonna be that good. Go in town a little bit ways, and you'll get the best gas station food in a small southern town. Go off the little ways off the exit. If you see pickup trucks with bumper stickers, it's a little bit of danger, but you know the food gonna be good. Just get your food and go. I mean, get your food and go. Because I was looking at this video on YouTube, not YouTube, Facebook, but it was a guy that was doing a food review. He went to a barbecue spot in Cleveland, North Carolina, which is in Wayne
okay.
County, which is outside of Salisbury. And somebody had commented on the video, even though it was a black-owned barbecue joint. It was like, "What in the secret KKK meeting is this?" Because the aesthetic of it made it seem like, oh, you ain't
Yeah.
welcome here. I mean, you and I know some of the restaurants back home, some of the older folks tell us, oh, we used to not going there, right? We used to have
Yo,
to go.
yeah.
You know that you could only get your stuff to go if you went there to eat. Cause I know before Fraser's had closed, they had told me, at least my mom did, that they still had the window where you had to go order
Uh,
if you were this.
phrases
Because
look racist. Like
I mean, the food is bomb though.
even the architecture of the building
I mean,
is
if you
calling
know
me a
your food gonna be busting, if you got wood panels, if you got the local fire, sheriff, high school, rescue squad, calendars on the wall, and somebody that been working in that kitchen for 20 plus years, you know that food gonna be fire. I mean, just get your food and go. Because, like I said, you know, like the type of vibes that some people get. Because I'm gonna tell you the story. My wife and I, before I ended up relocating out to New Mexico, we were thinking about a spot to move together, right? So one
yeah.
of the destinations was Savannah. So we did a tour of
Oh,
Savannah.
Georgia, yeah.
Yeah, we did a tour of Savannah. we did the horse and carriage, like Cam and Mace, it's for hire. So we got in the horse and carriage, and they were saying, "Oh, this is the quarters where slave once lived." And my wife was turned off by that because she's not from the South. But of course, me being from, I'm like, that's just
Uh,
racism. You get used to it. I mean,
yeah,
some of the things, with the South, it kind of feels like we can't ignore the history of the American South. We have to reckon with it, know that it's a part of us, but we can't just erase it like it never existed.
yeah.
Because like I don't know if you know, but the market in Charleston, like
Mm-hmm.
downtown area, I think that was originally where they auctioned off slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a spot in Fayetteville where I guess they used to do the same thing in Fayetteville because they did an
Oh,
interview with uh elder black gentleman who ended up playing football at Michigan State. I think he was one of the first black athletes to integrate the football team out at Michigan State. He was from
okay.
Fayetteville, and they did an interview with him in Fayetteville, and I guess it was a spot somewhere in Fayetteville where I guess it had that type of same significance. And the guy
I didn't know
filming
that.
asked the gentleman, "Do you want to sit down here?" And the older gentleman was like, "No, I don't want to sit down." And he explained to him the context of why.
Wow.
And it's
Wow.
it's like, for us growing up, in those areas, you still kind of have those pockets of like, I don't go there because you
Yeah.
still kind of feel like, you know, I'm not welcome there. Like a visual reminder for me was whenever I was go to school in Greensboro, going 158, cutting through Littleton, going through
Mm-hmm.
Norlina, passing by the marker that says Soul City. I didn't know the
Yeah.
story of Soul City until I read up on it and then watched the PBS special, Great Migration of People on the Move. And they talked about the story of Soul City. And I believe Eva Clayton, she worked on that project. And just to hear the story of it and just how, Jesse Helms and a whole bunch of those other good old
Yeah.
boys that was in power at the time, pretty much like, nope, we ain't doing that. And just kind of just seeing how, you have your visual reminders of its past, but it kind of feels like now with gentrification and people coming in that's not truly from the South and transplanting, it kind of feels
Mm-hmm.
like we're losing that sense of the true South.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be a matter of time before they have vegan options at Waffle House, and folks will
Ah,
use manners at Waffle House. That'll be the Waffle
shoot.
House I ain't eating at. I mean that the Waffle House, if you go to the right off exit 173, not the one in Weldon, because that's the old one. That one's good too, but that one's a little suspect. But go to the one
So
by
true.
Walmart. If you go between 12 and 2, you'll get your all-star special and a boxing match all in one.
Boxing.
I,
Hey,
I mean, I
it's
mean,
an experience,
it's an
right?
experience. I
It's
mean,
an
but you got to know how
experience.
to fight though. If you go and work at Waffle House, I mean, you saw the video of the one chick that got into the fight. She threw the chair, and the lady just one armed it like it was Thor's hammer, just moved it out the way. But I mean, Waffle House is God's gift to earth. I mean, you could be toe up drunk 2, 3 in the morning. I wasn't because I was in the house sleep at that time. But you could be toe up, be smashed drunk. They probably may mess around and let you fix the grill because they short staff. But you gotta wait till their sanitation grade go down though. If it's
That's
70 or below, the food gonna be good. If you got roaches or the syrup sticky thing on the table, the food gonna be good. If you see your cook having a roach, backwoods, black and mild, Swisher sweets, somebody's pre-rolls, I know you gonna make my food with love and care. Extra
you in good
bonus if
hands.
extra bonus if you dump ashes in the fryer for the season. I mean, that's how you get good fish at the cookout. Got somebody auntie with them sandals on. She got that cigarette dangling out the mouth. Hey girl, go and bring some more fish out of the kitchen. You got the spades table going over there. If you're nice to her, she'll maybe let you get a fresh piece of hot fish, hot chicken, straight out the fryer at the cookout. But we definitely gonna do another one so that we can explain for some of you all the rules of
Yeah.
going to a southern cookout and don't park in nobody's grass. I tell you that
Eh,
right now.
we do need
Let's-
to do that next time.
next
Next
next go
time.
round, we're gonna talk about rules to the cookout and how if you don't know how to play spades, I'm one of them. Don't don't
What?
Nah, bro. My card game is trash. I can't even
Oh,
play
oh yeah.
Uno.
Oh yeah.
My card game is trash, dog. I mean, it's bad. I
Next,
mean, now give me Trivial Pursuit or Outburst, I give you that work. But
if
when
you
it comes
invite
to
me back,
cards, I
we
suck.
playing we playing spades on a podcast. Like we talking strategies. We that's the next episode.
How to play Spade for dummies. Like how many books you think Corey got here? I think he got three in a possible. How many
That
books?
might that might actually be fire though. For the black family member who the family won't teach you, watch this episode. You will learn a strategy.
Now
You
Now, schools, if you do this as your fundraiser, have a spades or dominoes tournament or Uno tournament, one of those three, you will make money. Especially if it's no rules Uno, draw four, all of that stuff. Like I said, I can't win at Uno to save my life. My wife give me the smoking Uno. My son give me the smoking Uno. Now, when it comes to that PS, they can't see me in that one. Yeah, I'll be serving fades and Madden and Mortal Kombat and all that good stuff.
okay.
But before we go, any shout outs you want to give, bro?
No, man, I want to shout out you for just been doing this and like investing your time and keeping the culture alive and representing the 252. And yeah, man, shout out the 252, everyone who lives there, and like y'all the people who I write for and think about and yeah, man. So yes, like everybody back home, man. I love y'all. And yeah, and you for man creating this place and platform and I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. It's a safe space. You can catch this interview wherever you stream podcasts and on the official YouTube channel at youtube.com/slash beyond the album cover. And one more thing before I go. I'm gonna say this full chest. Eastern North Carolina barbecue is better than Western North Carolina barbecue. I'm gonna say it again. Eastern North Carolina barbecue is better than Western North Carolina barbecue. Start off in the 252 area, work your way east. Rouse, especially. I still say to this day, best chicken skin I've ever ate in my life. Rouse is a must stop every visit home. Rouse,
Mm-hmm.
Second Street Lunch. Those are the two restaurants that I gotta have whenever I go home to see mama, go home to see family. But of course, you got the barbecue pipeline down in Kinston, Greenville, Aiden, and of course, you got Raleigh and everything. And let me just run this by you real fast. So I was once again listening to Bo Mighty Jones podcast, and he had a person who did a news article for a certain publication, and they talked about the phenomenon known as craft barbecue and
Mm-hmm.
how people were going to this barbecue restaurant and paying $30, $40 a pound for some barbecue, where you can go to somebody's roadside barbecue shack, get that same thing for like 8, 9 a pound. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what type of nasty work is this? That's what people that don't know
Mm-hmm.
no better. Folks that come into town for conventions with lanyards
Mm-hmm.
and saying like, oh, I want to try something barbecue. I'm like, not at no $30, $40 a pound. You don't. You better give me the whole hog if I'm paying that much. Not no itty bitty
Mm-hmm.
plate either. But once again, Dr. Corey Miles, professor at Tulane University. Bro, once again, I appreciate you for coming on, and we're definitely gonna do this again.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.